This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and next week it's Gencon time, Indianapolis. It's going to be crazy, it's going to be fun, the buzz is already in the air. Now typically I do a couple of videos leading up with the games that I'm most excited about that are releasing at Gencon, and this is going to be one of those videos. However, this year I was making a top 10 anticipated list, and the week or two before Gencon, I've had the privilege of playing about half or just over half of the games that were already on my most anticipated list. And many of those I loved and great, they were good. And so this video is going to be my top 10 games that are releasing at Gencon. They're brand new, they're releasing. That most of these would have been on my anticipated list, but they're ones I've already played. So this is a even more tried and true list than just a hopeful anticipated list. This is a list of games that I've already played, many of them I already reviewed, that are releasing at Gencon that I want to tell you about because I think they're fantastic. So without further ado, let's get started. Now I'm first going to start off with a few honorable mentions. I didn't want to put expansions on this list, but I did want to mention some of those. I didn't want them to take up one of the top 10 slots, but there's 3 expansions I want you to know about. All 3 of these I've reviewed. The first one is the Sagrada. It's called Sagrada 5 to 6 player expansion. This is for the popular dice drafting game, but do not let the title surprise you or lead you astray. It's not really about just 5 or 6 players. You can now play it with that, but the big thing is whether you're playing with 1 or more players, you play with a new dice drafting pool that's private. So you have your own private pool plus a public pool, and it really takes some of the randomness out. It changes the strategies in the game, and oh yeah, by the way, you can now play it with up to 6. But don't let the 5 or 6 expansion trick you. This is much bigger than that, and it's fantastic. You can watch my review. By the way, for all these, I've put some links below for the reviews of these. The next one is for King Domino. It's Age of Giants. This is a cool expansion that adds a little bit of a take-that mechanism where when you get the most powerful tiles, you might end up getting stuck taking a giant, which cancels out one of your crowns. But if you get a powerful tile later, you can move that to somebody else's board. But the other big thing is that you get, there's a ton of new gold tiles, and they'll be different every game. That makes every game really feel a lot different. And that's the biggest part of this expansion, Age of Giants. And the last expansion I'll talk about is for Clank in Space. Last year at Gen Con, it was the big buzz of Gen Con. People were rushing there. I love that game. And now there's an expansion coming out called Clank in Space Apocalypse. And I've just recently reviewed this as well. This adds new schemes that now the black cubes that come out actually have things that they're doing. And the more that come out, the hotter it gets for people. Different things happen. And there's all sorts of new cards as well. But you can also take those black cubes and spend them to do all sorts of cool things. As a new currency in the game. And the final honorable mention is not an expansion, but it is a normal game, but it was released before, which is why I didn't want to put it on the normal list. And it's being re-released by a different publisher. It's called Arboretum. It originally came out by Z-Man Games. Renegade Game Studios is bringing this out. All new artwork, and so it's being re-released. It was hard to get your hands on. This is a fantastic game where you're building a beautiful arboretum. Everyone's building their own in front of them, sort of in a tableau style, with these beautiful different trees, and you're trying to make long lines of different trees that have to go in a certain order, ascending order. And the interesting part is the scoring, where you only score trees if you have the highest score of those in your hand. So it's an interesting twist because you need to be able to, you're trying to score big things in front of you, but you don't get to score them unless you have the most in your hand. So it's a very interesting twist. It's a fantastic card game and being re-released by Renegade.
Number 10.
All right, number 10 is a game from Breaking Games called Rise of Tribes. It had a very successful Kickstarter last year, a couple $100,000. And this essentially, I'm calling this sort of a gateway civilization game. Now, I don't even own a civilization game because usually they tend to be long and drawn out and super complicated just for being complicated. And this one is just really streamlined. It takes about an hour to play, but you're doing only one of 4 different actions, but it has a really interesting dice mechanism where you're rolling 2 dice and you're placing them in over different actions. And sometimes you'll just get the normal action, but depending on which dice are there, you might get a more powerful action or a less powerful action. Sometimes you really need to do something right now, but you can't. You can do it, but it's a little less than you would really like it to be. So maybe you'll hold off to next turn, or maybe you just bite your lip and do it. But you're putting people out on the board, you're moving them around, you're trying to get certain goal cards to allow you to do different things, like control different types of territories. All these different events tend to come out, which changes the game a lot. And so it's just a really interesting sort of gateway to civilization game that is very streamlined, has some dice manipulation, dice selection and things like that. And I found it very interesting and a really good sort of intro to civilization. So if you like those style of games and you want someone to kind of get into those bigger games, or you just want to enjoy a civ game with someone who doesn't play deeper games, this is an excellent one to look at from Breaking Games. That's Rise of Tribes.
Number 9.
The next one is from Van Ryder Games. I got a chance to play this at Origins. It is called The Big Score. Now this is a game that has two halves. The first half, you are drafting cards, and you're basically drafting all these thugs and building your team to go off to different locations and try to do some robberies. Now, if you can do the robberies by yourself, that's great, you get the stuff. But you might want to be working with other people and you're putting cards down, and maybe together you have the right people, like the getaway driver, the hacker, the muscle, this and that, and you're getting certain things. Now, depending on the things you get, will sort of home in an overall strategy for the game. So it's a drafting game that goes through 3 different rounds of drafting and stealing stuff, and you'll have some strategy. In the second half of the game is you go to this big, huge bank that's sitting in the middle of the table, and you're grabbing tokens out and pressing your luck. But if too many police come, it's the end for everybody. But you can get in there and try to get certain things that sort of synergize with some of the other things you've gotten. And it's an excellent press your luck style game towards the end, and it always ends in a stand-up moment with people screaming, hollering, and yelling. And it's really fun towards the end there. And that is The Big Score from Van Ryder Games.
Number 8.
So the next one is Nyctophobia. This is from Pandasaurus Games. I got a chance to play this at Gamma. Now this is a very interesting game where it's one versus many, and one player is going to be hunting all the other players. All the other players are going to be working cooperatively together, but the twist is they can't see anything. They can only communicate with words, and they're going to be moving around the board with the hunter sort of helping them with their hands, guide them, as showing them which directions they can move. They might be on the edge of the board. Here you feel a fence. Here there's another person. And you're trying to move around and try to get things, and you're trying to get to the car and get out. And as you're moving around, you're discussing with the other players what you've seen, what you're around, what you're near. And over the course of the game, you're trying to basically build a map in your head based upon what you've seen, or felt, I should say, and what the others have felt. But the hunter is playing cards, doing special abilities, scaring you guys, running you guys off. And it's a one versus many game that feels like nothing I've ever played before. And the cool thing is it was designed by a young woman whose dad is sight challenged. And so she wanted to build a game that everyone could feel what her uncle does as he plays games. So I think that's really cool. It's a very unique experience. So check out Nyctophobia from Pandasaurus.
Number 7.
The next one is from Tasty Minstrel Games, TMG. It's one I just recently reviewed. The link's below me. It's called Trade on the Tigris. Now this originally started as sort of a joke with Jeff Engelstein and Ryan Sturm, saying we're going to make a game about trading in the Mediterranean like all the other games, ha ha ha. And they ended up turning this into a good game that has some timed trading and negotiation, but also has many Euro-style mechanisms where you're trying to collect sets of things like fish and some imported goods, and you're getting more points each round for how many of these you get to put together in a set. But the bottoms of these cards have you go up certain tracks. And so sometimes you're trading and you get cards that move you down the track you're trying to move up. Yeah, but you know what? It might be worth it for points now. And sometimes, all the time, you can lie about what's on the bottom of the card when you trade with people. And so you can mess people over. You're moving up and down tracks, and those tracks are getting you more points for the end game and more powerful abilities that you get to combo together as the game goes on. So interesting mix of Euro style and negotiation. And this is called Trade on the Tigris for 3 to 6 players. Takes 60 to 90 minutes to play.
Number 6.
The next one is from Gameland Games. This is part of their Tiny Epic series. Now they're going to be having copies. From what I hear, it's almost 100% certain. They're not exactly sure, but hopefully they're supposed to have Tiny Epic Zombies. This was the last big Kickstarter they did. And I got a chance to play this at the Arizona Game Fair here. It's our local con in Arizona, Phoenix area, earlier this year. And this is a game that has multiple modes. So it had the mode that it's really designed under is one versus many. And I played the zombie when I played this game, where the zombie is going against all the other humans, and the humans are trying to do 3 different objectives, and the objectives change each game. There's a certain amount of them that randomly get assigned at the beginning of the game, and they're trying to finish all 3 of these objectives, while the zombie player takes a turn in between all the other players. The zombies are secretly giving cards to other players, which can hinder things and make things bad on the turn if they can kind of guess where they're going to. But they're also trying to place zombies out to either kill some of the humans or kill the barricade in the middle of the courtyard. So it's a really fun one versus many, but it can also be played one versus many where all the people are playing competitively instead of cooperatively. Or you could play everyone cooperatively against an AI zombie. Or you could play all just competitively. So there's like 5 different modes you could play the game in, but the one versus many is the main one, and that's the one I played. I really liked it. If you like those tiny epic games, and you like one versus many sort of style things, and this is one to check out, and that is Tiny Epic Zombies from Gamelin Games.
Number 5.
The next one is from Blue Orange Games from designer Rainer Knizia. He is still putting out top-notch, amazingly streamlined, awesome games. This one is called Blue Lagoon. This is a cross between an area control game and a set collection game, and it does both of these in such an elegant manner that's very streamlined, where you're placing, the game has 2 halves. The first half, you're placing boats all around this island anywhere you want, and then you're placing people on islands that are adjacent to other things that you already have. But you're also trying to gather different sets and different things around the island, and you're making sets of those to try to get points. But there's other ways to get points, like getting on all the islands or stringing together a lot of the islands. So there's all sorts of different other ways to score points, almost a point salad. The second half of the game is played much like the first, but you can only go adjacent to where you are. So where you've ended up in the first round really has a big play on the second half of the game. It's great. It's an hour or less, very streamlined, very mean area control with some set collection and point salad. It's fantastic. That's Blue Lagoon from Blue Orange Games.
Number 4.
All right, this next one is My Little Scythe. Now, this is not a kid's game. This is a family-style game. I'm calling it a Gateway Plus game that has been inspired by the mechanisms from Scythe. Now, this is going to be at I think they're sharing a booth with the Meeple Source people, so you might want to look for either Stonemaier Games or Meeple Source booth. They're selling it there. My Little Scythe, it's really cool because it gives you the mechanisms and sort of the skeleton of what you can do inside, where you're moving around, you're gathering resources, you're using those resources to get different things, you're bringing things to the middle, which used to be the factory, but now it's the castle. You can get into fights with other people where you're throwing pies, and some of the resources you're getting are helping you make pies. If you give resources to other players, you're gaining friendship, which is similar to popularity or popularity and size. So it's really interesting. They pulled Scythe mechanisms into a game that's a lot more streamlined, a lot more easy to teach, but still has enough going on that I think at least all my gamer buddies enjoyed it. And I'd call it a Gateway Plus level game. About an hour, and the production is out of the park. It's amazing. So if you ever want to play a game that doesn't take as long to set up as Scythe, that gives you a lot of the same feeling without the depth of that, then you're going to want to check out My Little Scythe.
Number 3.
My next one is going to be released by CMON, one of the bigger companies there at Gencon, and this is going to be their big Gencon release. This is called Gizmos. A while back, I did sort of a sneak peek after playing it at the CMON Expo. This is an engine building game for 2 to 4 players. Takes about 45 minutes to play, maybe up to an hour tops. I'm calling this like Splendor 2.0. This is sort of a Gateway Plus, a next step game after Splendor, where I'd say if Splendor and Potion Explosion had a baby, this would be it, because there's some marbles that come out of a single shoot, and some of the times you're pulling specific marbles. Well, after you start building an engine, when you pull a red marble, you might have a card built that says when you pull a red marble, pull another one of your choice. And you might be pulling another one of your choice, you might have a card that says, hey, when you pull a black marble, get a random marble. Oh, I can build this one. Well, anytime you build this type of gizmo, it does this, and does this, and does this, and you start comboing all these things together, and it's a really awesome, streamlined engine builder. It's fantastic. So if you like games that are like an hour or less but have a lot of things packed in there and you like engine building, Gizmos is one to check out from CMON.
Number 2.
Number 2 is probably one of my favorite co-op games that have come out this year. This is from Renegade Game Studios. It's called Spy Club. You are neighborhood kids trying to solve different mysteries around the neighborhood. Essentially, you're trying to match cards of different types, trying to get all the same ones together, and then you know a certain aspect of the crime, like the motive or the weapon and things like that. But as this goes on, it gets a little bit harder. There's a lot of good team play between you and the other players. There's lots of things you can do together to get some bonus actions if you're doing similar things with each other. The coolest thing is this uses what's called a mosaic system. It's not a legacy game. You can bring players in or out. Nothing gets ripped up or anything like that. You can replay a lot of these modules, but there's over 40 different modules that you unlock. You can play a campaign of 5 different games, and each time there's going to be something new that unlocks. And then there's an overarching story towards the end there. It's really, really cool. That system blew me away about how flexible it is, but yet how engaging it is, and how all those different puzzles sort of come out and changes the puzzle of the game, which is already a sort of a puzzly style co-op game. It is fantastic. It is streamlined. It's been developed about as smooth as you can play it. And it's fantastic. If you like co-op games that take 45 minutes to an hour each time, you don't have to play the campaign. You can just play a single game and still enjoy a lot of it. And that's going to Spy Club, and that's going to be at the Renegade Game Studios booth.
Number 1.
Now, before I get to number 1, I just want to remind you that many of the things that I've talked about, I already have videos on, so check the links in the description below. My number 1 game that you need to check out at Gencon actually was my number 1 most anticipated game of the year. And it's not often that something you have such high hopes for actually comes even close to that, because a lot of times they're unreal expectations, but actually meets it, or even possibly is going to exceed it the more I play it. And this is called Detective, a modern crime board game from Portal Games. This is a 1 to 5 player cooperative game where you're trying to solve crimes. There's 5 different crimes, and each of those is going to be done in one sitting. That's 2 to 3 hours. But there's actually an overarching story between all of them. But you're going around, think Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, but a modern version of that. You're going through and reading cards and going to different places. But there's also an online database that you're using to research certain things that you type in. And you're looking up people and witness statements and questionings and evidence and labs and fingerprints, and they're all matching together, and it's so cool to do this. You can also go outside, called breaking the fourth wall, and there's certain terms that you're encouraged to go off and just Google and look up and learn things, because it's a fictitious story, but it's in a real place, and you can actually learn things from real life things that happen that are interwoven into this fictitious story, and it's absolutely amazing. So this is the real deal. You're going to want to go check out Detective if you like cooperative sort of mystery crime solving games. I can't think of one better that I've ever played in my life, and I've only played one of the 5 cases so far, and that's Detective from Portal Games. Well, I hope this helped you kind of make a list of things that you may or may not want to see. Again, a lot of the resources of these games I've already got in the description below, and that you can learn even more about them if you so wish. If you see me at Gen Con, stop me and say hi. I'd be glad to say hi to you. And I hope that I've been helping you find and enjoy the next board game you'll love. This has been the Game Boy Geek. We'll see you next time.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.